thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited. I wasn't able to be on last month's webinar when Angie presented the first half of our series, but I went back and watched the video and I just love what she was able to bring. I think it laid a great foundation for what I'm sure is going to be another great webinar today. So for those of you who were not here last time, I'll just give you a brief introduction. Angie actually is family to me. She is my cousin on my husband's side, and we've known each other for a long time. And let's see, Rob and I have been married 40 years this August, so a long time. But it's only really been recently that we've gotten to know each other a little bit, and I became aware of the work that Angie was doing in her background. And when I was thinking about the topic of stress and adolescence and all of that stuff, I thought, oh, I bet Angie'd be a great speaker. So I called her, she said yes, and here she is. I'll let you, Angie, go ahead and give a little bit of your own background, credentials, whatever you want to share as kind of an introductory. And just for some housekeeping, if you all want to keep yourself muted, that would be great. I'm going to pay attention to the chat box, so I will interject with questions as we go. And Angie, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna, for asking me to come again today and talk about adolescence and stress. It's not sounding like that's a great topic, but it's something that we're all dealing with every day. So I appreciate the opportunity. If everyone can turn their cameras on, that would be awesome. I love looking at faces instead of little black boxes. So it's just nice to see who I'm speaking with. So that would be awesome. So I wanted to, let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more as we go through. Today we are doing stress and adolescence. So a couple of weeks ago now, we had a brief introduction to hormones and kind of what adolescents are going through when we talk about anxiety and we talk about stress. And so today we're going to look at kind of what do we do with it now that we understand what it is. So for those of you that don't know me, let me see how I can see if this changes everything. No, it does not. Let me figure out technology on my side then.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room.
Right. I am trying to get my screen to switch. So let me unshare and then I will try to share it again. What would we do without technology? I'm not sure.
When it works.
When it works, it's awesome. When it doesn't, we're like, what the heck is happening? All right, let me try this again. Well, this may be what was happening. I'll just go out of it completely and try to log back into my presentation and we'll see if that will work. I had it up when we were starting to have those difficulties, so maybe it had to do with that. I don't know where everyone is logging in from, but I'm logging in from Missouri, and our weather here today is absolutely gorgeous. And my husband and I are headed to the Lake of the Ozarks tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to a really wonderful weekend down at the lake real soon.
We've got them from all over the place. I know we've got some from Kentucky, someone from Texas, New Jersey. We got them from all.
Awesome. Well, the weather's probably a little bit of everything. All right, we're going to try this again. So let's do stress and adolescence, and we'll see if maybe the slideshow will work now. Let me get you guys out of there. Again, thanks for allowing me to come today. It looks like it's working now. Again, my name is Angie Alphen, and as Donna was saying, I am a cousin through marriage of hers. And so we've known each other a long time. I don't know that we ever knew what each other did, which is kind of funny. You know, you get together, you just talk about family stuff, and you don't really talk about careers. But I have a master's in clinical counseling in Missouri. I know every state is a little bit different, but here I'm called a licensed professional counselor, and I'm nationally certified as a counselor. I have a private practice here in Fayette, Missouri, which is right in the middle of Missouri. And I am trained in EMDR, which is a trauma therapeutic approach, as well as DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, both of which I love to use. I work a lot with probation and parole. So that's really kind of where my background came from, is working in the prison. So I started off my career in a all-male prison not too far from Fayette, and I learned a lot about addictions. And so that's when I started researching, what do we do with addictions? How do I help people through that? And I was introduced to DBT and EMDR. So that's kind of what my background is. I have a large family, and I feel a very strong connection to people, which is going to kind of play into our topic today of stress and adolescence. So hopefully you'll get a little bit out of this, and we'll get through this presentation fairly quickly. So today I want to look at how perfectionism leads to stress and how to help teenagers through those different thoughts. What is unrealistic thoughts, and what do we do with those when we start to have those? And then some simple stress management skills that we can teach everyone. I spent some time last weekend at the lake as well. We have a summer cabin, and so we're at the lake a lot. And this last weekend, I had 2 of my grandsons with me, and we talked a lot about some simple stress management that I was able to teach to them as we were chasing lizards around the cabin, which is something that they love to do, but their Oma does not really appreciate very much. So we're going to learn some simple stress management skills that you can apply anywhere that you're around kids of any age, really. The younger we start, the better off we can help them. So when we look at the power of perception, I think it's so important that we really think about what does it feel like to be a teenager in 2024? And so as we proceed in this understanding of teenage stress, we really have to look at who is looking at the stress indicators for today. We know that with many years of experience that a straight A or winning a basketball game or a football game is not all there is in the world of success. We know that as adults who have transformed our way through adolescence into adult, young adult, into older adult for myself. But for teenagers, that's what life is about. It's about the winning. It's about the getting all of the great grades. It's about who is breaking up with who, right? We know that when breakups happens, this really provides us a platform to really teach really good relationship skills. And for teenagers, those feelings of building a relationship, having a breakup of a relationship, all of those are feelings that really bring on a lot of stress. They bring on a lot of unrealistic thoughts. And many times a lot of feelings of failure, not being good enough, not being able to uphold what their thoughts were that they were going to do with these relationships. I remember the first relationship I was in at probably 14 years old. I thought it was going to be forever. What we know as adults is that it's not forever. But for teenagers, many times it truly is forever, and it feels like that. And so we have to really stay within our power of perception and listen to the teenagers' views, not our feelings of it's going to be okay, you'll get through this. Everyone goes through those breakups. Those words aren't always really helpful during those times because a lot of adolescents have this feeling. And remember from last time that we spoke, they have a lot of hormones playing into those feelings that these relationships or these grades or this game is forever. And so this is a really great time to really educate our teenagers about social, emotional, and behavioral aspects of getting through this wave of feelings, these waves of emotions that are going on. And that means we first have to help them be very mindful of what they're thinking. Again, if we could teach this way before some perceived failure incident, the better we will be at being able to get through those waves. And so how do we start to teach teenagers as early as possible before they are in that crisis mode, how to really be mindful about what we're thinking, feeling, talking, how we're behaving, all of those. And mindfulness is one of those words, kind of those trigger words. I don't like using the word trigger, but sometimes when I hear mindfulness, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to ask me to be quiet. I have a really hard time being quiet. And so when people say, Angie, do you practice mindfulness? I always have to remind myself of what mindfulness is, because I had a perception that it was kind of this moment when you were releasing everything from your mind, just being quiet and not really doing or thinking anything. And that's not at all what mindfulness is all about. Now, that is a type of mindfulness. And we have to remember that there's many types of mindfulness, but mindfulness that we're going to talk about today takes a ton of practice. And so we have to first spend some time really believing that we need to spend time with it. So really kind of allowing ourselves permission to say, I need to be very mindful every day at certain times in order to really get the benefit out of it. So how do we teach this and why do we teach this a little bit more? So we have a lot of psychological responses when we are pushed past our limits, right? We know that our responses. We know that our body is doing a lot of stuff when we are in a stress position. I know today when I logged on and I text Donna and I said, I'm not able to get on. I'm sure she had an actual physical response to the fact that, oh my, here we go again, and feeling like she was responsible, right? So we know when we are pushed past our limits, because she can't control everything that technology does to us, but we all know what that feeling is, right? Many times when we feel like we are outside of our comfort zone, we feel that response again. And adolescent years are all about being pushed outside of their comfort zone or being pushed past their limits, right? So one of the things that we do to teenagers is we always tell them what? Do the best you can. Do all you can, right? So I have grandkids from ages 6 to 16. So I know when I talk to my 16-year-old about what I expect of her, it's pretty high. I expect her to get good grades. I expect her to work really hard in the activities that she's in, which are cheer and track. I expect her to make all the practices. I expect her to eat healthy before the practices. to take care of herself after the practices while she's also doing chores and whatever else comes up, taking care of her family because she has younger siblings. And so she's also starting to date a little bit, which puts on a lot of pushing past our limits. And so it's really important that she has the tools to be mindful of what she is thinking so that she can learn to control all of those responses that are happening in her little body. As much as the 6-year-old who I spent this weekend chasing lizards with. His favorite things is to pick up lizards and snakes, which pushes me outside of my comfort zone and outside of my limits because I'm not a real big reptile fan. So teaching him that it's not a failure when you don't catch them, but maybe that is a time to take a deep breath, reset our body so that he can have that adrenaline rush when he sees the next lizard, right? So learning how to manage all of these things is really important. And so we want to really think about what is it that we're telling our adolescents, and then how are we teaching them to really do stress and anxiety, because that's really what we need to do is teach them how to do it. All right, so what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is really this very intentional practice. Okay, there's key words there, intentional practice of bringing your attention to the present moment. Okay, so we're going to bring our attention to the present moment. And we're doing this by noticing what our thoughts and our sensations are in different ways. And so there are many ways that we're going to learn how to do mindfulness, okay? One of the things is we're going to deliver education. We're going to teach our adolescents what mindfulness is. And we're going to allow ourselves as well as our adolescents to practice. And you as the adults, or you as the coaches or teachers or therapists or whatever your roles are, it's really your job to offer the time to practice mindfulness, because teenagers don't know how to do that. We're on a go, 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 go world, right? Social media teaches us nothing but how to be perfect at everything, or how to really give criticism about what we're doing. And so what we have to do is allow teenagers time away from social media, away from those unrealistic thoughts, away from all of that, to really allow them time to practice. And we have to offer them some activities in order to teach them how to do that. And so really what we're going to talk about today is, how do we do that, right? How do we do stress? How do we do all of this in a world that says, go, 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 go? And so there are many different ways to learn mindfulness. But one of my favorite ways to learn and how I practice mindfulness is the way that I was taught through DBT therapy. So DBT teaches us that we must first learn very quickly how to observe, describe, and participate in what's going on in our mind, okay? And so the what of mindfulness means that we're not wiping away all of our thoughts, but yet becoming very aware of what our thoughts are. And this is why it's so important to help kiddos practice this, is because if we think about it, mindfulness is really like walking through a room with the lights on. Now, we have to go about this in a way that we're all understanding what it is that we're doing. So we're going to do so much better if we are aware of where the furniture is. right? We're going to be aware of what furniture is in the room. So what we're going to be doing in our mind is we're going to turn on the light and we're going to be looking in and observing what is going on. So that's the very first thing that we're teaching, is observing what is going on. Now, secondly, we want to be able to describe what is happening in there, okay? We want to be able to see the furniture and be able to describe what furniture is there. And so a lot of times being able to see the furniture means that we can see how cluttered our minds really are when we start thinking about all of the expectations that are going on in our mind. We see all of those expectations. We see all of those thoughts running through our mind. And if we're able to observe it and we're able to describe it, then lastly, we're going to be able to participate in it. And so this is the biggest part of what is mindfulness. Being able to observe and describe what furniture is in the room, we can actually decide if it's something that we want to keep. We get to decide if we want to participate in that way of thinking. And so a lot of times when I teach this to teenagers or to my clients, I'm talking to them about what is the influences that are going on that put that furniture into our brain, right? And we know that there is a lot of those different types of things that are going into adolescents' brains, as well as ourselves, right? I am very much aware of how easy it is for me to get on my phone and stroll through Facebook, jump onto TikTok for 1 minute, right? That 1 minute that lasts for 3 hours. All of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, how did that just happen? All right. But one way we can really help kids is to help teenagers understand what their thoughts are compared to what reality says. And so some of the things that I have on the screen right now are ways that we are influenced by this is what puts the furniture into the room for us. Social media has such a huge impact on teenagers. Having a teenager see what that influence is and how it could be unrealistic is very important. I work with a lot of moms and dads in therapy who believe that they need to be able to parent according to how social media says that they should parent. This is not the reality. The reality is you got 4 kids running around everywhere and the house is a mess, but life goes on. That's the reality. So the unrealistic expectations come from those perfect family photos on Facebook. What we don't see is that there were 1,000 pictures taken and they finally got one that was good, right? So social media has a huge impact on what we understand is perfection. And we got to help teenagers see that that is not realistic. We also know that many parents' expectations are not realistic. We put a lot of pressure on kids to be straight A students, to always have their homework done. And we know that a lot of kiddos cannot do a straight A, right? What is average? Typically in an ABC type of grading system, a C is average. So why do we always push for an A? I have one grandson who really struggles with reading. And so he knows, and I have 2 grandsons that are same age. So they compare each other. They're in the same class with each other. And the one that struggles, he knows that a C is what he wants to obtain. The other one is a straight A student with no trouble at all. And so having the expectations, having one see that the expectations are different for him is so important. But when I go in to help him look at what are the thoughts, he's always comparing himself. He can see it now. He sees the comparison, but I have to give him that quiet time and teach him what that means. Peer pressure. Holy moly. Okay, this is a big one when we think about adolescent stress. We think about what peers are saying is important. If your peer is looking at Facebook or TikTok, we know that that's not what we want our teenagers to be doing all the time. So giving an adolescent the ability to see that they don't have to do that, the expectation is unrealistic in here, is going to be really important. Expectations for self. Man, kids can be so hard on themselves. And so letting them know that, what does it look like to fail? And letting them sit with that for a minute, giving them time to feel that, giving them time to see that in their brain, failure are the obstacles in the room that they're tripping over. Performance in sports is huge. Man, we start sports. I don't know that my grandkids ever have a moment without a sport expectation in their life. Even the 6-year-old is in sports. And if they don't do all of the sports just right, then they don't, all of a sudden you see them not wanting to do it. I don't want to go to basketball today. I don't want to go to football today. What are those self-expectations? I overheard my grandson, I have an 8-ball in my house where they can shake it, to see the answers. And he shook it and he said, I heard him ask it, am I going to be really good in football? And it broke my heart. And so I sat down with him after that and I talked to him about, what is that expectation? Is that realistic? He can try, but that doesn't always mean that we're going to be the best. Sometimes we have to have some failures in there. So giving him time to sit with that was really important. And then self-expectations and work expectations. Again, very hard on our adolescents. And so when we think about all of these bullet points that I've laid out here, I'm sure each of you can come up with many, many more bullet points of what our adolescents, and honestly, ourselves, are enduring every day. We have those expectations as well. So it's going to be really, really important, again, that we are able to stop, go back, observe it, be able to describe what's going on up here. And then we're going to talk more about participating as we go through these bullet points. All right. So we want to be able to see it. We want to be able to really understand it. And then we're going to participate in it here in a minute. Next, we want to know, how do we do mindfulness, right? We know what the mindfulness is, right? We know we need to observe it. We need to be able to participate with it. We need to be able to talk about it. This is how we do mindfulness. When we see all of that furniture in the room, we want to look at it non-judgmentally. We want to remain present in the moment without judging. So when someone says to you, I see a lot of things that are, and they use the words good or bad or yucky to describe, you know that they're judging it. And it's really helpful if we can talk to kids about how to not be judgmental, how to just see it for what it is and not judge it. It's hard. We always seem to place that label on it. And so when we're observing it and describing it, we want to make sure that we are doing that non-judgmentally, which means we don't shoulda, coulda, woulda, buts. Those are the things that we don't want to have in our language. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, buts. I always say there's no buts in this room. No buts in this room. Because when we use buts or shoulda or coulda or woulda, we're taking what the reality is and we're adding an unrealistic thought, typically. So trying to get those labels out of the way. If we experience a perceived bad or a good, we want to hold on to that typically. And we get panicky when we maybe shouldn't have those thoughts. There's a should have, right? We want to be able to see, hey, I am perceiving that, and I just want to see that it is what it is and not put those words behind it. Reality says that typically, if we want to hold on to something, then we're holding on to the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and the buts. We want them to see we don't have to hold on to that anymore. So non-judgmentally is so important. This is a very temporary experience, and we become afraid that it won't end when we hold on to it. So being able to let go of it as it's just a moment in time and to focus on just it individually, letting it go by, means that we don't have to linger on the negative or the bad part of it, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, so when we look at one mindfully, we want to understand that there's a lot of chaos that goes in our furniture world. So being able to take a deep breath and just look at one thing, seeing it for what it is, and then moving on past it to be effective is going to be really important. If we focus on each piece of furniture individually or one mindfully, then we're going to be more likely to achieve our goals and to really think about what it is that we want. If I get a F on this grade, on this test, and I only focus on the F, it's going to be really hard to perceive myself as getting an A, B, or C at the next test. But I see it just as a piece of furniture. I can walk on by it. It doesn't have to control me. I can do this non-judgmentally. I can do this by just observing it, describing it, and then moving past it. Okay? So we know what mindfulness is. Now we know how to be mindful. But how is that done, right? How do we really do this? And so these are some of the things that I do with my kiddos to help them stay very mindful and not judgmental. Some of the things that we just automatically do on kind of a co-pilot, those are great ways to teach kids how to be mindful. When you pet a dog, right? When the dog's just sitting there and I'm just petting it, not paying any attention to the dog, I'm not doing it mindfully. But if I bring that dog in front of me and I pet it while I'm looking at its eyes and I'm talking to the dog, I am being very mindful. I am being very mindful, observing just the dog. I could describe how the dog smells, how the dog feels, how the dog is reacting to what I'm doing, all of that, if I am mindful. If I am not mindful, then I tend to do it really fast and it has no feelings to it, right? It just gets added to the chaos. Washing dishes for adults is a great way to teach mindfulness. Have someone wash dishes and only pay attention to the dishes you're washing. All of a sudden you slow way down. And all of a sudden each dish brings on a whole lot of meaning. Taking a shower is another thing. And I'm going to kind of jump quickly ahead. I know we're going to run out of time today, so I so apologize. When you're taking a shower, try to shower without doing it the way you always do it. Typically, people take a shower routinely. We all get in, we all lather up a certain way. We all have a routine that we go through. You can think about how you shower. You can go through everything and you're going to know exactly how to do it. But you don't do it mindfully. You're not in the room with it.
Angie, I don't want you to feel rushed. I know we
Oh.
started a little bit late, but we have all the time we need. I think that this is important that we learn and that we get to practice. And, that practicing will probably be part of where we usually have that lunch break. So
Okay,
don't feel rushed. Take your time. Take a deep breath.
take a mindful
Be
moment.
mindful.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. When you get in the shower in the morning or tonight, I'm going to challenge you to try to do it differently. Try to go outside of your routine, because you're going to see the difference between going through the room with the lights off versus going through the room with the lights on. And so it's really important that we teach ourselves to slow down through that moment. Now, people will say, well, Angie, I don't really need to be mindful when I'm taking a shower or when I'm washing dishes. It's not something I want to remember, right? This isn't so much about being mindful for these events. This is how you practice to become mindful of the big events, okay? If you can be mindful while you're taking a shower, you can then learn to be mindful when you're going through a breakup with a girlfriend or boyfriend. You can learn to be mindful when your parents are fighting and you're feeling like a failure. You can learn to be mindful when you fail a test so that you have the energy and the capability to come back and make the grade that you want to later. So you have to start with something that seems very familiar in order to learn how to be mindful. Driving a car. So I have a little story about me. And as Donna was telling me, take a deep breath, Angie, slow down. I had a mindful moment driving my car not too long ago. We live on a gravel road, and at the end of our driveway that meets up with the gravel road, there are banks on both sides of the road that get mowed by the highway department. And in order to see really clearly either direction, those banks need to stay mowed, or I can't see very well to get in and out of our driveway. So for about 3 weeks, I had been going home complaining to my husband. This was last summer, going home and telling my husband, oh my gosh, they really need to mow those banks. I'm afraid someone's going to have an accident coming in or out of our driveway. And every day I would say to him, man, are they ever going to mow these banks? This is just ridiculous. And this went on, like I said, for 2 or 3 weeks. And one day, as I was leaving my driveway, I get to the end of the driveway. I knew it was going to be a really stressful day. And I got to the end of my driveway and I was having all these thoughts about, I don't want to go to work today. I know today is going to be a really stressful day. And I thought, Angie, you need to have a minute of mindfulness. So I took a deep breath. And as I let that deep breath out, I just observed what was around me in nature. I looked around because we live way out in the country. So I usually see ducks and I see deer and I see a lot of critters. And so I was just looking around and all of a sudden I noticed, oh my gosh, they mowed the banks. What the heck? When did they mow these banks? I know they did not mow them last night because I had gotten home about 7 o'clock and I was leaving about 7 o'clock. So I thought, okay, I know they did not mow those banks while I was at home. And I'm thinking, wow. So then the whole way to work, what am I thinking? Oh my gosh, they mowed those banks and I did not even notice. Well, they must have just done it yesterday. And I just didn't notice it last night. So that night I get home from work and I go in the house and my husband comes home and I'm like, oh my gosh, did you notice they mowed the banks? And he started laughing. And I said, what is so funny? And he said, Angie, I wondered how long it would take you to notice that they mowed the banks, because they did that 9 days ago. 9 days I pulled in and out of that driveway driving a vehicle that could have hurt someone, but not paying any attention to what is around me because our minds are so busy somewhere else. Driving a car is such a great time to practice mindfulness. And if you do try it, you will get so bored. You will start to realize how many other thoughts you have going on in your mind that typically make the drive go really fast. All of a sudden you realize that, oh, I remember this curve now. Oh, I remember the stop sign. Oh, I remember, because you go through the motions, you don't even pay attention to it because our minds are just going through life. We're walking through the dark, bumping into whatever it is we bump into. We're not being mindful. So these are all ways to really practice how to be mindful, what it is that we need to be teaching kids early on, right? Not being judgmental, not being mindful, not being effective if we don't slow down, take a deep breath, and really look at the furniture in the room. So how do we do this with teenagers or adolescents? How do we get them to really start off? It sounds simple when we talk about turning the light on for the furniture in the room, but what does that really mean? And so what we want to do is we want to teach them how to be mindful of this dance that we call life. And so this is one of the best sayings that I have ever had. Life is a dance. Mindfulness is witnessing the dance. And that's got a lot of power in that statement, right? So one of the first things I do when I teach mindfulness is I always tell them that the greatest place to start practicing is in the restroom. In the restroom, when you go into that stall, typically you're alone. I hope you're alone. Typically well, I always say you got to leave your phone outside of the restroom because many people, the first thing they do is they get on their phone. So tell them, leave the phone outside of the restroom, go in the restroom, because your senses are what bring in all of this stuff that fills our rooms up. So in the stall, your senses are not as stimulated. There's not as many things to see, okay? When you're in the restroom, take a deep breath, counting in for 4, hold for 5, exhale for 4. So just do it and I'll count. If each of you will do this with me, we will do a little bit of mindfulness. So we're in the restroom. You can close your eyes if you wish. You can leave your eyes open. I learned mindfulness in the prison. So I actually learned how to do mindfulness with my eyes open, looking down at the floor to kind of let the other things go away. So whatever you want to teach for safety reasons, that's fine. But then we're going to go into the restroom stall, and let's start with just a deep breath of 4, hold for 5, exhale for 4. And while we're doing that, just pay attention to what's going on in the mind. See how many pieces of the furniture you can do. So let's begin by taking a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, many of you probably heard me counting, and that was what was in your mind, was me saying the words. And you may have even had some thoughts of, is anyone else watching me while I do this? Is there someone else sitting in the room that doesn't want to do it with me? So I feel awkward, right? Those are the furniture pieces in the room. Those are the thoughts that we want to pay attention to. So if we can do that several times a day, and we start to hear mom and dad's voice, We start to hear personal expectations. We start to feel all of these expectations that have come into us through social media. We're starting to see all of the furniture in the room. And that's what's important, is being able to see that. And so what you're doing is you're teaching kids to slow those thoughts down. Is that expectation of moms or dads really realistic? Maybe not. So I'm going to walk on past that furniture. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm not going to hold on to that piece of furniture, right? When we hold on to it, then we got to carry it with us all the way through the room. That's not being very successful. So providing a space to invite the quiet is so important. When some of my clients come into the room and they are very anxious and kind of going 100 miles an hour, the very first thing I do is I say, ooh, let's take just a moment. And it gives them that space to just see what furniture is in their room. If we just immediately start talking or start doing something, we're not able to take that furniture and put it where it needs to go. So provide a space to invite the quiet. Smartwatches. For any of you that have a smartwatch, man, they are amazing when they came out with what? Mindfulness. It pops up on your watch. It tells you, take a deep breath, practice being mindful for just a moment. I tell all of my clients, turn that on and turn off your social media notifications. You will be surprised at what a difference that makes just by doing those things. Turn on your mindfulness on your smartwatch, turn off your notifications for emails, turn off your notifications for Facebook, turn off your notification for Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is you have, and turn on mindfulness. So when my watch pops up, it's time to be mindful. I just take a minute and I slow down and unpack the living room furniture. All right? Coloring with intention. Provide opportunity to just color, nothing else. And as they're coloring, they're unpacking the living room. What unrealistic expectations did you see in that furniture in the room? Give them time to just color. No conversation, no music. Now, many adolescents will say, I don't like doing that, Angie. That's uncomfortable. I need music on. I need noise on. What is noise? Noise in out here becomes noise in here, so we don't have to see all of those expectations. And then we're learning to run from them. So teach those kids to quiet it down a little bit and just feel what that feels like. If it becomes too anxiety provoking, teach them how to take that deep breath and unpack what is in that expectation. Walking. I taught this to one of my grandsons this weekend. We were walking up a really steep hill and I told them, don't worry about getting to the top. Just worry about the next step. Don't look up there. Just look here at what is the next step. And I laughed and I said, we're going to practice The Walking Dead. Have any of you seen that movie, The Walking Dead, or that series, whatever that is? I haven't ever seen it myself, but I've seen pictures of it. The Walking Dead, they all kind of walk like they just boom, boom. They're not in a hurry. They're not going anywhere really fast. They're just pacing themselves walking. And so I challenged both of my grandsons to just pay attention to the next step as we went up this really steep hill. And when we got to the top, the 10-year-old said, "Oh, Ma, I can't believe we're at the top already." I'm like, yeah, because you weren't worried about getting through the whole room as fast as you could or how exhausting it was going to be to get there. You were just worried about the next step. Kind of like Oma, who finally saw that the banks were mowed, right? Wasn't until I took a moment. Use your senses. Senses are a great way to really relax and bring some of that down. So bring an orange into the room and tell kids, break open the orange and just smell it. We're not going to eat it. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to break it open, and we're going to learn to observe, describe, and then we're going to participate in the orange. So breaking it open. What is it you observe? I observe the smell. I observe how it felt. What is it that you observe with your nose? What was the smell like? How do you describe what an orange smells like, right? All of you probably, when I said orange, all of you had an idea of what it smelled like. Your brain is so connected to all of that. And so teaching kids that connection, because if they ever come in with addiction, those connections are really important to know about, right? Then have them put a piece of that orange in their mouth and don't swallow it. Don't bite it. Just hold it in your mouth. Being very mindful when we eat is wonderful on our obesity problems of the world. If you are mindful of every bite, you don't eat the whole bag of chips, you just eat a few. It's when you're not being mindful, all of a sudden you look down and you've eaten the whole bag. Being mindful teaches us to slow down and really taste it and to really savor that moment. Dancing, oh my gosh. There's a wonderful video on dancing mindfully where everybody just lets it go. It is the most amazing feeling, but you have to be aware of all of the thoughts that you have in your mind, because what do kids do? They compare to each other. And so we want to not compare to each other. What does it feel like to close your eyes and just let your body move to the music with no expectations? No feelings of shame or no feelings of shoulda, woulda, couldas. It gives a whole new mindfulness way of doing dancing. It really opens up some wonderful feelings. There are balloon games where you can take a balloon, you can put different feelings or different kinds of words on them and throw the balloon around the room. When they catch the balloon, they describe a time when they felt a certain way. Okay, so what are we doing? We have to observe the feeling and then be able to describe it. So those are really good to do with adolescents, to teach them how to describe what they are feeling. Journaling is amazing. And if they don't like to journal we are taught to draw in the lines or write in certain patterns, right? We have to write in paragraph form. You have to write it in a timeline. Tell them it doesn't matter. Just write whatever is on your mind. No rules about how you have to write on the page. If you want to write upside down, you can. Let them do that and then let them describe what that felt like, to have no rules. There's a coin game. I put the YouTube link on there. It's a little lengthy, but it's a really good game that you can play with kids. You give students a coin and you give them a task such as spinning it on the table, or how you can play football with a coin. You do all these different tasks and you have the students reflect on how or what this has to do with mental health. When they spin it, like if they can spin it just on the edge, sometimes they'll talk about spinning out of control, how they feel out of control sometimes in their mind. And so it's a really good game to play with teenagers as well, just to get kids talking about what they're feeling and what they're doing. Okay, final tips. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Practice, practice, practice. If you're not doing it 5 to 10 times a day, you won't be good enough at it when a big event happens. And so if we can stay very mindful 5 or 10 times a day, or every time you go to the bathroom, today, just take a deep breath. See what's going on in the room, observe it. It will make your whole day go so much calmer, and the expectations go away. Invite a practice into your own life. You as the adults, you as the teachers, you as the counselors, all have the ability to teach it if you know how to do it yourself. So invite your own practice into the room. I do mindful walking all the time, so it was such a wonderful experience to do it with my grandkids this weekend. But if I had never done it, I wouldn't have known what that meant, right? So practice, practice, practice. Identify what barriers there are for you to complete things, okay? It's really interesting to start focusing on what is going on in my mind that has the furniture all cluttered up and the lights off. Start looking for what are the barriers. Look for the signs of stress or moments when the lights are off in the room. I've noticed when I'm becoming really stressed, when that chaos gets really high, what's happening is I'm not turning the lights on. I'm just bumping around in the dark, bumping into everything. And if I can slow down, take a deep breath, turn the lights on, see what's going on, all of a sudden I don't bump anymore. And the stress level comes way down. And then provide an opportunity to talk about the stressors. Every kid needs to understand what's going on when we teach them this. And I hear it a lot is, oh, Angie, I just recognize that my dad really does expect me to get straight A's. Okay, that's a lot to carry. So allowing someone the opportunity to talk about that. Or they might say, hey, Angie, I realize I'm really scared to walk home at night. I got that. You got the lights on now. Instead of just running through the dark, let's make a plan. Let's try to make this a safer place for you to be. And do it by learning your own method, which is totally awesome if you can learn your own. All right, we made it through and it's just 12:15. So any questions or anything that I need to answer before you all break into your rooms? All right. Well, if
Angie,
not,
I think we're gonna, rather than breaking into our rooms, I'd like to see if there's any questions. Like, for example, I know when you were going through it, even the very last slide, like barriers, recognize barriers. What does that look like? Because I don't know what a barrier might be to know it's a barrier. So can you give some examples of what barriers might be?
absolutely. So sometimes some of the barriers to doing your mindfulness would be seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting too much. So some of the barriers are we have trouble shutting off all of the outside influences to our senses. And so being able to recognize this is not a good place for me to try to be mindful. Maybe I need to go into another room. Maybe I need to shut off the TV. Maybe I need to shut off my ear pods, right? A lot of times we're trying to do so many things that we don't even realize that those are influencing or triggering some of that hormonal response that we talked about last time. So when our body is perceiving, if I were to turn on music right now and it was the theme to Friends, okay, and I started playing that, all of you who've ever seen the Friends episodes would have some feelings come in. If we don't want to have those feelings or if they're bad, then we need to stop listening to the Friends episode music, right? And so some of those can be barriers. Some of the other barriers can be that we've never experienced how to be quiet before. We've never experienced turning the lights on in the room. Not being allowed that quiet space to do these things in. So that's one of the barriers to doing mindfulness. One of the things that becomes a barrier in mindfulness is, what do I do with unrealistic expectation of my parents? What do I do with unrealistic expectations of myself? And so that's a great time to just start talking and to maybe get a child or an adolescent or ourselves into therapy to start talking about some of those unrealistic expectations. The other thing about adolescents realizing the unrealistic is they don't know possibly that it's unrealistic. So when I say to my grandsons, one of you can be a straight A student, that's the expectation, and one of you can be a straight C student, that's the expectations, they don't realize the difference unless someone tells them. So if I said to Kyle, I know you can do this stuff, so my expectation is a little higher. What is your expectation for yourself? Helping them realize what that is. If I say to Cole, I expect you to get a C. And he'll say, well, Oma, why don't you expect me to get an A? Because, honey, I know you're trying, you're working, you're trying to figure out how to get all of those brain waves to help you read better. But that means a C is okay. But Oma, I want to be just like Kyle. I want to get an A. Okay, is that realistic, Cole? Let's talk about that. And then he's going to say, well, I feel like a failure then. Okay, there's that self-unrealistic expectation that can become a barrier. I hope that helps, Donna. It takes a lot of like weaving through all of the furniture to figure out what's unrealistic or what are barriers, and it takes a lot of talking. It also takes us spending time learning our barriers, because you'll start to discover, like, okay, in the middle of a basketball game, it's really hard for me to be mindful, but I need to be mindful, and because I get so worked up, right? I get really worked up in basketball games where I want to yell and I can't do that. I shouldn't do that. So I become very mindful and I stick a sucker in my mouth. That automatically brings me down. Because if you got a sucker stuck in your mouth, it's really hard to yell and to say, you know, what you need to do. But without that sucker, man, that mouth just runs. So little things like that, discovering those little things would be really helpful. There is, I have this Therapy Games for Teens book that I'd be glad to share as a resource. It's written by Kevin. I have no idea how you say that last name, but I'll put it in the chat. It has a ton of ideas of how to deal with stress in adolescence. What's stressing me out? That was the balloon. Trying to figure out, have all the teens stand in a circle, tell them to work together. These kind of resources are huge, huge help figure out all the barriers. So while I'm putting that in the chat, what other questions? And hopefully I answered a little bit of that question, Donna.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would love to just go straight into some Q&A time. If people want to just go ahead and open your mic and ask Angie a question, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Trina with Future Leaders Outreach Network over in Texas, in Arlington, Texas. And I really appreciate and enjoy what she mentioned and the things that she was talking about in regards to mindfulness. I do my best to try to practice a lot of that with my grandchildren as well. I'm a little, I don't know, it's not really a question, but I was just thinking or pondering on what she was saying about how she would talk with one grandchild versus the other when it came to the grading. So I had the same discussion with my grandchildren. And I don't expect them all to be on the same level, of course, that we're all different. We all have different learning curves or, way we learning styles, period. So we're going to see a lot of that differently. But what I think, I'm not saying that anything was wrong with the way it was said. I just think everybody will maybe do it a little bit different, like you were saying. For me, when I talk to one grandchild that I know is not going to make the A's, because the learning curve or the learning style.
Mhm.
So, I might say something like what you said, like, let's work at making C's or let's work at making a B. I won't even go all the way down to a C. I just say, let's work at making a B. I just say, well, why, I want to make a A like Sonny. I'm just going to use their name. I want to make an A like Sonny. And I say, well, Keena, it's nothing wrong with making an A like Sonny. But since you're not making at least a B, let's just focus on making the B first. And then once we can accomplish the B, then let's take a look at if we can elevate to the A. That way it's like it gives them a challenge. It gives them something to look forward to, and it gives them something to work on.
And as long as it's a realistic expectation, then I think that that's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
So sometimes we put the emphasis on the A's as the expectation.
Right.
And so the expectation becomes that everyone should get straight A's, right? Especially if you have people who are comparing themselves, which we know that everyone does at school, right?
Yeah.
And so having a child say to themselves in here, I want to get a C because I know I can do a C work, and that's going to be really good. If I can get a B, then that would be awesome.
Right. And so
And
that's how I look at that. Yeah, but I don't want them to get stuck in thinking, well, I know I can make a C because Granny said I could make the C. And, I know, this is where I'm at. But then they just limit themselves and then they just stay there when they could have the potentiality of making that B. Maybe not the A, or, maybe they just need to work on their levels to get to that because as we age, as we grow in our education and learning abilities, then, who knows, that B could turn to an A or the C could turn to the A, but it took them growing in their levels first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that we as society also has an expectation that we have to achieve. We're always pushing, right, for that next best, the next best, whatever that's going to be.
When success looks different for every person. Yeah,
it
because success for one person may be an A, but for me, success is not an A. Success for me, which is what I tell my grandchildren, is the fact that you're learning and you're growing in where you are, and that you're not staying stagnant in where you are, but you're learning something new every day that you can apply to your life, but also share with others.
Right.
So to me, that's what success is, not necessarily, that I have to be this, multi-million-dollar company, or that I need to make these top grades, or just whatever that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And learning how to say it in the child or the adolescent or the adult's own language is really important. So not talking of our expectations, but what are your expectations?
Right.
And then helping them achieve that expectation, right? And so I think it's really important to start talking about the struggles as well as the successes. And so trying to normalize the struggles is really important. And then allowing kids to meet it and seeing their own expectations. So if Cole expectation for himself is to be an A student like Kyle, then me helping him achieve that is going to be really important. But when it pulls him down, right, when it starts to drag him down, that's when the furniture in the room got too big and too
Right.
bulky, and he
Right.
needs to turn that light back on. And so
Mhm.
starting to have the language, I think, is so important. We don't teach our kids good language when it comes to being able to talk about those steps.
Right.
Using Cole and Kyle as the example, Cole is getting ready to go to tutoring this summer, and it's interrupting a swim day. And that was the only day they could get him in for this tutoring. And so I'm going to take him to tutoring. So today, when I dropped the boys off, I said, okay, I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Cole, you have your appointment. I didn't say what it was, right? I didn't, that's up to Cole to disclose. And so Kyle said to Cole, where are you going? How come you get to go with Oma? And Cole said, because I want to be able to read a Louis L'Amour book.
That's awesome.
Okay.
And Kyle said, I've got one I can let you borrow when you're ready. Now, they're same grade, they're peers, they're cousins, but they're peers.
Yeah.
Cole had the language to talk about what he was getting ready to do. Kyle understood that this was an expectation of Cole's, and so he's helping bringing him in. Now,
Yeah.
would that happen with every other fourth grader in their class? No, because they don't all have the language. So we have to teach the language, and that's what we're really working on here is how do we teach it? We start by recognizing what's going on up here.
Right. Exactly.
Then we can start to learn the language.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
great way of, now, what you just did, it's Trina, right? Trina,
Yes.
what you
Yes.
just did was you walked through a process of mindfulness.
Mhm.
And that's practicing,
Yeah.
slowing it down and turning that light on in that room and
Yeah.
seeing what's in the way. And then you were able to talk through all of that. But
Yeah,
we put a lot of our perceptions in that room when we
Yeah,
talk to
we can.
teenagers.
We
Yeah.
definitely can. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we got to be really careful that we're using their perceptions.
Right. Been
yeah,
doing it for a
awesome.
while now.
Yeah.
A lot of us in this office has been working on mindfulness for a while in our professional and personal lives. And so it gets easier.
Yes.
But you do have to watch because every now and then, just because you want maybe sometimes more than they want, you can allow your own perception to kind of find its way in there. You have to navigate it right on back out, but yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah,
Yes. Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Are there other questions or comments?
I wonder how many people, if anyone is willing to talk about it, do a mindfulness routine themselves, if they wanted to share that. Please, yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, what I try to do every day at work is during lunch, I'll take 15 minutes to eat. The rest of that time, up until the hour, I close my blinds, I lock my door, I put on my spa music, I lay down on the carpet with my pillow, put my fan on, and I just relax. Because from 4 o'clock that morning until I get home like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, it's zoom, 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 zoom. And if I don't take that time to just like get everything off my shoulders, off my mind, out of my ears for just a minute, I think I might just pop.
Yeah, that's when that mind gets too full. And so when you're lying down and you're letting all that decompress, hopefully you're really starting to see all of the things in our mind as they go through and just really practicing like seeing it. Okay, I see that. I can move on now. I can get past that. I'm not carrying that stuff with me, right? From 4 o'clock on, we don't want to carry all that crap with us. We want to be able to level it out. So thank you for that. Awesome. Michael, I think you had your hand up.
So I always pride myself on, I guess just living my everyday life, like trying to be mindful every instant of the day, if that makes sense. And it's because like I struggled with anxiety and depression a couple years back, and I went and talked to somebody, and they brought this tool to my knowledge, I guess. And now, like I said, I try to incorporate it into everything that I do. So, like every single part of the day, I try to make it like a part of my day to realize that everything that I experience or that I feel or perceive or anything like that, it's my brain, which like my personality is inside of my brain and I'm experiencing all of these things and stuff like that. And I don't have to, whatever feeling might come with a thought, it's just those two things associated. And it doesn't have to be like that. If you understand that that is why it's happening, you have the power to take that away, I guess. So
Which
I try
is
to live
so,
every day like that.
and that is exactly what we talk about when we talk about observing it, describing it, and then participating in it. Is exactly what you just described, Michael, how you're breaking it down, you're seeing it, you're practicing it, and you're removing a lot of the clutter as you go along. So perfect example of that. And being able to teach that takes it to a whole new level, right? So for what all of you are saying is being able to teach how to do that is so important for our adolescents. It's so important that we're able to provide that space. For, is it Letitia? We were, if you were allowed to take all of your adolescents and let everyone lie down on a pillow and put the spa music on and give them 10 minutes of downtime and then get everyone back up and have some kind of understanding of talking about it, how impactful would that be, right? I think a lot of times our adolescents don't get enough quiet time in order to be able to do the things like what Michael was talking about. And so it's really going to be up to us to teach that to them. I know a lot of times I will tell the grandkids, okay, you all go outside and play for a minute. I need quiet time. How about let's all have quiet time, right? Instead of sending them out to play, let's just bring all of us in and let's all have a quiet time. But I saw a lot of you going, yep, I do that too. You all go outside. I'm going to have a little quiet time, right? So learning how to bring that into our practice is really important for our adolescents.
Angie, how much is emotional literacy connected to what we're talking about? I guess I'm just thinking, we do a little bit of work around that with some kids at our juvenile detention center because they don't have the words. Like you're talking about recognize it and describe it. They don't have the words. I mean, for them, the word is anger and pissed. And, they don't know that they're hurt or frustrated or abandoned. I mean, they don't have words to describe. So how does emotional literacy fit in to what we're talking about?
It is huge, Donna, huge. And we could spend hours talking about emotional literacy because even as adults, our emotional literacy is a very small wheel compared to the emotion wheel. We, even as adults, don't know how to describe what we're feeling or understand what we're feeling. And so I think that is a huge part of it, Donna. And so when we allow an opportunity to have kids say what or describe what they feel they're observing, we're starting that emotional literacy. We're starting to grow that, right? So I do a jail group now where I give out an emotional wheel where we talk about the feelings in our body compared to the feelings that we're experiencing. And so many people are not able to do that. They're like, I don't know what I feel, so I'm just going to choke somebody out. I had a guy say that one time. He's like, I don't know. This feels bad, so I'm going to choke him. And so we had to break that down. And what he actually was experiencing was a lot of sadness. But he didn't know what to do with sadness, but he knew what to do with anger. But we have to teach that. That's not something that just comes naturally to people. There are some amazing emotion wheels out there that are linked to the way your body feels. And so I would encourage using those every opportunity you have. With our adults, hang on, I'm going to grab a book. I'll show you what I use with my adult clients. So I actually did so there's 6 therapists that work here in my office, and we do a book club every month where we discuss a book. And so we use this Atlas, Brene Brown Atlas of the Heart book as one of our book reviews. It reads very much like a textbook. It goes through every feeling and every emotion that you could possibly have. It even has in here that there are 2 emotions that the English language doesn't have a word for. And it tells us in German how and what that word means. And I was like, oh my gosh, I knew I had felt that before, but I never knew what that was. And she breaks it down in an amazing way. I would encourage all of you to start a book club review of Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, because it's a hard book to just read, but once you read it, then you can kind of understand how to find different things. And then she has a workbook that goes along with it that really talks a lot about having that meaningful connection and language to describe what it is that we're feeling. And so I use this a lot with my clients to help them learn how to describe what they're feeling to understand it better. But you're right, Donna. Emotional literacy is very low, I feel like, in my world. I'm not going to speak for everyone else's world, but as a therapist, I still don't always know what I'm feeling. So I'm constantly digging into using the correct language and starting to build that as we go. One of the biggest things I got out of Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart when I did the book reading part with my club was I did not know the difference between envy and jealousy. And I had always used the word jealousy, and it was an error. And now I understand envy is different than jealousy. And once I understood the differences, now when I want to use those words about things that I want or things that I have that I'm afraid I'll lose, it gives it a whole different meaning. If I'm envious of it is different than if I'm jealous of it. And so if you're all wondering, what does she mean by that? I'll encourage you, go look up the definition of envy, go look up the definition of jealousy. And from now on, listen how people use it and educate yourself about the differences, because it has a different behavior attached to the word. Just like anger and sadness have different behaviors attached to them. So if you're not using anger correctly, you have the wrong behavior. If you're not using sadness correctly, you have the wrong behavior. So great question and great resources with Brene Brown's book. Again, very boring read. So don't say, oh, Angie said this was going to be fun. It's not, but it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Other questions, comments before we end today? I'm looking in the chat, seeing if anybody's raising their hand.
Great discussion, folks. Great discussion. Thank you all for that.
Thank you so much, Angie, for your time today. I'm going to look for you coming back. Maybe we'll do one on emotional literacy, huh?
Ah, that would be awesome. Because then that, you know, every time you teach something, right, for all of you teachers out there, every time you teach something, you become better at it yourself. So that would be awesome. So thank you all very much for allowing me to intervene in your lunch hour. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks so much. For all of you who are used to us, we are off in July, June and July, because it's summer and we're going to be mindful of enjoying some time and the sunshine, soak up that vitamin D. But we will be back in August with our back to school connection, and we will go monthly thereafter. It's always the fourth Wednesday of each month. Hopefully, we're going to get this Zoom technology figured out that's connecting crazy with Eventbrite by then. But thank you for all of you who are faithful followers and participants. We appreciate you. You will receive an email with a short survey. It's only like 10 questions. Please take the time to respond to that. Let us know other topics that you're interested in, because we really are here to meet your needs. And we don't know what those are unless you share them with us. So let us know what other subjects you're interested in. We'll get some speakers involved in that. Or if you have someone that you'd like to recommend as a guest on one of our lunch tables, I'd be happy to entertain that conversation as well. Angie, thank you again for your time today, and we'll see you on the 4th of July.
See you then. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.